that we know what the kernel actually does and what it is, we can dive back into how the computer initially processes when you turn it on. So this kernel is actually coming from another computer where another software developer wrote in assembly or C for the initial bootloader firmware that actually finds where the kernel is on the disk and gets it started for the current device. So it really still is that chicken and the egg problem. After it found where that kernel, or the bootloader found where that kernel is loaded onto, it loads it up, does the initial BIOS and bootloader programs, and it loads that kernel into your memory or RAM so that it may actually be used now. What's happening is your grub is the type of bootloader itself, and it's going to offer you which kernel you want to load now that it knows where they are. There's actually a bunch of different types of kernels, including monolithic kernels, which will be the focus for Linux. And then there's a couple other kernels, micro, hybrid, exokernel. Some are used for safe boot and just for different systems, but not what we're concerned about right now. Once you select that main monolithic kernel, it's going to first see, okay, what CPU does it have, memory management, device drivers initiated, just as we talked about earlier for what the kernel does. Once it sees that they're all a go, it's going to, quote unquote, mount your root file system. So what's happening here is it's creating a map between essentially your RAM and your currently used device and your root directory, which is with the slash. It's finding out where these root directory files are actually located so that you can have an organized root directory when you're working with your Linux system. And once it has mapped this root directory, it's going to initiate the first process of the kernel, or the first user space process. And this is going to be your systemd. And your systemd process or command is responsible for every other user process that follows. So from here on out, we're just going to be dealing with processes that related with systemd. And in the next video, we're going to cover what systemd is really doing, such as these background processes and other initial processes started after your computer is ready to initialize.